famous Shijia Hutong in downtown Beijing. I suppose that many of you have already known that a Hutong 这个语速行吗？
哎呦，请了哪一位？里边请你好。天官赐福报进宅，又报喜来又报财。哎，金招牌、银招牌，哩哩啦啦挂起来。您家也有了千年宝，他家也有了万年财。千年宝了万年财，大伙儿发财，我天天来。哎，新年新月新日生，红红绿绿贴满门。左边贴着摇钱树，右边贴着聚宝盆。聚宝盆上有金鸡，金鸡上有个小金人。我问金人哪里去？一到此地，大下根。甜酸豆汁儿哦，麻豆花。甜酸豆汁儿粥，麻豆花。
I'm from Madagascar. 我来自乌克兰。
I'm from Mozambique.
Hello everyone, this is Julia. We're now live from the famous Shijia Hutong in downtown Beijing. I suppose that many of you have already known that a hutong is an alley flanked by courtyard residences in Beijing. Many hutongs have experienced centuries of years and have witnessed ups and downs of time, and Shijia Hutong is particularly so. The 500-meter-long Shijia Hutong is about a mile away from the Forbidden City, the heart of Beijing. With over 80 courtyard residences around, Shijia Hutong has become a famous destination for tourists. Here you can admire the distinctive style of old Beijing's architecture, and what's more, have a look at the old Hutong lifestyle here, which is very difficult to find in modern Beijing. As what the British poet P.B. Shelley once wrote, history is a clinic poet written by time upon the memories of man. We have so many ways to record history. In books, we see words and pictures. In museums, we see paintings, sculptures, and artifacts. And today, we are going to see history recorded by the sound, a very distinctive way. You know, there is a man who was born in Edinburgh and has spent many years in China. When growing up, he has got obsessed with these unique sounds of old Beijing life in hutongs, and he made up his mind to build a museum that could record these sounds. So he tried his best to find and record these unique sounds in hutongs that existed decades ago. So the visitors of Shijia Hutong Museum could have a chance to relive their childhood memories with these sounds. His name is Qin Siyuan. The given name Siyuan means that to search the origin. His mother, who was a Chinese immigrant, gave him this name. She hoped that such a name could remind him of his Chinese origin. Hello Hello, Suyuan. Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. So, how many years have you spent during your childhood in Beijing?
I came here first in 1979, so I stayed here for about 4 or 5 years when I was a child.
Oh, that's a quite long time. So, how did you enjoy your childhood in Beijing?
Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah, it's very different from. In those days, it was very different from Europe, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so did you spend a long time in Hutongs?
No, well, yes and no. In those days, Western or non-Chinese visitors to China weren't allowed to live in residential areas, so we had to live in hotels.
Okay.
So I lived in the Friendship Hotel, but by day I did practice wushu in the Shijia Hutong Museum, which is the most famous sports school in Beijing. So I went every day. I went through the city, sometimes using a bus. But when my mother felt I wasn't safe enough, she would get me to get a taxi, and then we'd go through all the old Beijing to go through to the Shijia Sports School, which is just on the north side of the of Beihai Park. So it's right in the middle of. It's right in the middle of Beijing, next to Hohai.
Okay, so you are also a kung fu fan.
Well, I mean, yeah, as a child,
The kung fu.
yeah, and as a child, that's what I did, yeah.
Okay, so apart from kung fu, what kind of memories about old Beijing life impressed you the most?
Well, in those days, I mean, I don't remember that much because I was very young and I lived in the hotel. And the rest of the time I was in a sports school. So, and to be quite frank, I mean, old Beijing life kind of finished in 1950s. So I'm a bit young for that.
Okay.
But if you're talking about Hutong life, I lived in Hutong later on when I came back to Beijing in my early 20s, and I lived in what's called Dazayuer, which is a Hutong which is being built up over the years. Successively with small brick houses to accommodate more and more people for cheap housing.
Okay, like this one.
No, nothing like this. No, nothing like this. This is a very, very well constructed, completely from scratch, 6 million renminbi provided by the Prince's Trust to make a museum. So no, it's very much like you'd understand a shanty town. Like it's very poor, almost like a slum. Everybody has to share outdoor toilets, limited running water, and a lot of Beijing hutongs are still like that now in central Beijing, which is a courtyard which has been built up, more and more brick houses inside, built very, very cheaply, just to accommodate more people very cheaply. So
that was the true lifestyle at that time.
Yeah.
So did you enjoy some folk arts at that time, like Kongzhu or something like that?
No, but when I was a kid, I knew about these things, but you don't experience it in everyday life. Now in Beijing, if you want to experience these things, you have to go to parks. So I think Beijing parks are possibly like the most important place to experience old Beijing culture, because a lot of it is still alive with people actually, practicing Kongzhu in real life.
Yeah.
In parks, and as well as many other things.
Yeah, and today we have the honor to have two professional Kongzhu artists to perform this performance here. Okay, let's have a look. These are quite classic clothes, right?
I have no idea about the clothes. Yeah. But it's a shame these Kongzhu aren't making sounds. A lot of Kongzhus make sounds, and these are silent Kongzhu.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you play Kongzhu yourself?
No, I can't. No, I tried, but it's too difficult for me.
Yes, it's very skillful. Kongzhu is also called the Chinese Yoyo. The basic Yoyo is shaped like two discs connected by an axle. The Yoyo is spun by a string wound around its center and by pushing and pulling on the string by moving two sticks. Yes. Kongzhu is a very good spot enjoyed by a lot of elderly people in China even now. There are many skills in playing Kongzhu. For those who just joined us, this is a live report from China's Xinhua News Agency at Shijia Hutong Museum. We're now watching the traditional Chinese folk art named Kongzhu. The basic yo-yo is shaped like two discs connected by an axle. The yo-yo is spun by a string wound around its center and by pushing and pulling on the string by moving two sticks. There are many skills in playing Kongzhu, like pulling, spinning, pushing.
Wow!
I'm interested in this kind of life, like living here, the 小胡同.
I like 长城。
对胡同感兴趣，我其实第一次来到这边，从来没有来过，觉得特别好玩。
So, seeing this courtyard museum is about, I think it's about 1,000 square meters, right? And there are like 8 exhibition rooms and 1 multifunction room in it. Let's enter the house and have a look at the pictures. Okay. These are all real pictures of hutongs and the traditional gates in China. And wow, look at this room. It's quite old-fashioned, like a very traditional room. Okay, this room is furnished according to traditional furnishings. According to traditional furnishings in the 1980s and 1970s. Okay, we can see two old-fashioned bicycles. Have you ever seen these bicycles in your childhood in China?
Of course, yeah. These are the Fenghuang, which is the Phoenix bike, which is based on the rally bike from England, and these are the most important things part in life in the 1980s, which you had to have electric fan, TV, stereo, the fridge. The fridge used to be in the living room because it used to be a status symbol to have a fridge. It wasn't just a functional object; it was also a social. It was something that denoted social status, having a fridge.
Nearly 1980s, right? Just like this time. Okay. Okay, look at this. So what's the function of this? Do you know that?
This is, I can't remember the exact phrase, but what it does is basically it converts kinetic energy into electricity, and then that fuels a light that's on the front of the bike. Now that's very, very rare in Beijing. Nobody used headlamps in Beijing in those days. I mean, still, it's very rare in Beijing now, let alone in the 1970s or 80s. So that's probably an embellishment by the museum rather than something actually accurate.
Yeah. So in that you put it this way, right?
That's
use
right.
the friction to generate light. I saw one in my grandmother's house. So let's move on. Wow, this room is a little more old-fashioned than that one. Okay, look at the ear. It's from the 1950s and 1960s.
Yeah, well, this is
older than you.
Yeah, this is definitely older than me. This is from the 1950s. You can still see that a lot of old Beijing, like pre-1949 Beijing, was still the old furniture was still a part of everyday life. It wasn't until like the 1970s and 1980s that people started wanting a more modern look in their houses. But 1950s, I think, slightly more well-to-do people still had, quite nice furniture from pre-revolution days. And of course, every household had a portrait of Chairman Mao, and possibly also a portrait of Zhou Enlai as well, Premier Zhou. So those would have been on possibly together or maybe on opposite sides of the room. But generally, there's definitely going to be a portrait of Mao and possibly also a portrait of Zhou Enlai. Having a sewing machine was a bit like having a refrigerator or a TV in those days. That was also, it's not only a functional object. You couldn't just take your clothes to be mended. It wasn't so common to just buy a new item of clothing. Most households actually mended the clothes rather than buying new clothes, and so it was. You had a nice sewing machine. It was also like a status symbol as well.
Yeah, it's quite a costly furniture at that time. Nowadays in China, a man who owns his own apartment and car is thought to be financially mature to get married. But at that time, I think a bicycle, a sewing machine, and a wristwatch would be a classic necessity for a man to get married. That's a rich man in that era. Okay, let's move on. The museum is now so big but very well furnished. And now we came to the multifunction room called Sound of the Hutong. Okay, look at this machine. How to use it? Okay, let's have a look. Is that here? Okay, I will do the. So Siyuan, you just you just made this machine to record old like Hutong sounds, right? Can you?
Sorry. This is a kind of prototype of a project that I'm doing called Beijing Sound Museum. And it's trying to make a history of Beijing using only sound. So sounds that I'm recreating from the past. So really it sounds from the 1930s all the way to the 1990s. So, but because this is the Shijia Hutong Museum is really about old Beijing culture rather than modern China. So I only included some sounds from pre-revolution China. So it's what we call Lao Beijing or old Beijing, like traditional Beijing from before 1949.
So how many sounds are there in this machine now?
There are not that many sounds. I haven't put that many sounds in this one. I wanted to keep things very simple for this interaction with museum visitors. So it's basically split into two sections. One is hear individual sounds from old Beijing, and the other is to kind of recreate an environment of recreate environments from old Beijing. It's very much from the Hutong's perspective. So it's not from, like say, you wouldn't be in a school or a factory, but you would be in a hutong to hear these sounds.
Yeah, it's a very good thing. Let's have a try. Okay, so there are two sound categories, like this one is.
One is xiangqi, which are instruments. These are instruments that hawkers use to sell their wares. So each different thing that people would sell, as they walk down the hutongs, they would advertise their wares. There's two ways they can do this. One is by calling out using human voice, and the other is using some kind of sounding instrument. Now, there's a tradition and there's a way of doing it. So certain things have a set sound. So for example, if you're a hairdresser, if you're a barber, then you have this special instrument that you use, and everybody uses the same instrument. And there's some other things which they call. So if they're selling vegetables or selling some other things like peanuts, then there's a special call for this. And there's a way of calling out. However, as everyone's voice is slightly different, there are variations between different callers. But there are definitely set ways of advertising particular kinds of goods.
Okay, so it's like the original version of advertisement in that time.
Yeah,
at that time.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Let's have a try. There are so many kinds here. Okay, let's try this one.
哎，大小，哎，小金鱼儿嘞，来几条不来几条，三两条就卖一毛。
So that's definitely a human voice, right? So, can you guess what the sound is? Have a try.
小金鱼儿嘞，小金鱼儿嘞，卖大小金鱼儿嘞。
Okay, Suyuan, tell the audience the correct answer. What's that voice?
It was selling goldfish.
Wow, selling goldfish. So the man is shouting like, okay, I'm selling goldfish here. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, it's definitely not a human voice. It's the sound of an instrument. So please guess what the sound is. Have a try. Okay, do you want to know the answer? Let's see a VCR.
听啊，卖香油的。你看这个声音呢，就是过去的卖香油的博物馆里有这种声音啊，你听啊，卖香油的。
Okay, so Suyuan, what's that sound? Tell the audience.
Selling sesame oil.
Oh, sesame oil. So, how long did you take to record this sound? Is it difficult?
No, this is actually very easy. There are collectors of these sounding instruments and people who know how they used to be done, and we simply we borrowed the instrument and we invited someone who knows how to do it, and then we hired a recording studio. So this is actually one of the easiest sounds to record.
Oh, okay. So let's try another one. Okay, another sound of an instrument. Okay, have a try what the sound is. Please guess. Do you want to know the answer? Please see a VCR. Okay. What did you guess? Do you want to know the answer? Suyuan, please tell us the answer.
Selling makeup for ladies.
Wow, selling makeup. So women like that. Okay, let's try another one. So it's definitely a voice of an old man. What he's selling, what he's shouting about. Please have a try. Guess what the sound is. Okay, do you want to know the answer? Please see the VCR. Okay, Suyuan. Okay, Suyuan, please tell the audience the answer.
I don't know exactly what they're called in English. In Chinese, they're called bingtang hulu, which are like toffee apples, but instead of apples, they use haw fruit. There's small crab apple-like things that you see on sticks. You see them all over Beijing still now.
Yeah, I know our children like to eat it, right? So is it difficult for you to record this sound?
It's very similar to the sounding instruments. You just need to find enough people who know the previous calls, those calls from old Beijing, and so we invited quite a lot of these people and made lots and lots of recordings, and we chose the ones that were thought to be more accurate. because some people like to perform too much, make it too beautiful, and some people are more kind of faithful to how it used to be.
Okay, so are the artists, Chinese artists who can make these sounds still allowed in China now?
Yeah, I think there's a tradition of using those sounds, performing in performances, and there's also temple events like Miaohui and things like that. So I think there's more and more interest for old Beijing culture now. So yeah, there's a lot of these people who know how to make those calls.
So what do these old sounds in Hutong mean to you?
Well, they mean that in old Beijing, before the modernization movement really kind of transformed China, if you lived in Beijing, you lived in the Hutong, you would have heard lots and lots of different sounds, very cultural sounds. So, or this is actually commercial sound, but it's culturally orientated because we're not talking about kind of TV advertising. So you would have heard people selling their wares like that. Each one had a different call or a different sound. So you would have heard this outside muffled, maybe beyond the walls of the Hutong outside. You would have heard the birds that people keep in cages. You would have heard the kind of pets that they have. It would have been a combination of natural and cultural sounds. In those days, there were some cars and some bicycles, but it was still very rare. You would have heard more foot traffic and rickshaws and things like that in terms of traffic. So the soundscape would have been very, very live and very cultural. And I think that's it would have been a very positive experience to have those sounds kind of surround you.
Okay. So this courtyard residence was once owned by your grandmother, right? Lin Shuhua, a very famous female Chinese artist, writer in modern Chinese literature. So, which picture is your grandmother?
So, well, this is my grandmother, and this is my grandfather. They both lived here. This courtyard was given to my grandmother as her wedding dowry from her father. And her father, in turn, called Ding Fupeng, was the last imperial mayor of Beijing. So he was in charge of all of Beijing, as well as Tianjin and Hebei province. And so his courtyard stretched all the way from Ganmian Hutong behind us, all the way to Shijia Hutong. So it stretched all the way from one Hutong to the next Hutong. And this what used to be the back garden to his house. And he gave his back garden as wedding dowry to his daughter.
Okay. So this is a picture of your family, right?
That's right, yeah.
Oh, that is when you were young. How old were you then?
I was probably about 27 or 28.
Okay, so the lady in front of you is your mother, right?
Yeah, that's my mother and my father and my wife.
Okay. So, could you please tell us more about your mother?
Yeah, my mother is the only child of Chen Xing and Ning Shuhua, who I just talked about. And she traveled to the UK together with her mother in the late 40s to join her father. Her father, Chen Xiyong, who was the China representative to UNESCO under the nationalist government. So that was in the 40s. So they went over to Europe to join him there. And then, and then after the events of 1949, and so it made it very difficult to come back. So she ended up staying there with her parents in London, actually. And so my mother used to work for the BBC and in Bush House as a Chinese broadcaster for the World Service, BBC World Service. And then after I was born, she moved to, my father got a post teaching or starting up the Chinese department at Edinburgh University. So she traveled with him to Edinburgh, and that's why I was born in Edinburgh.
Okay. So look at this picture. Look at this picture. So, what's this picture about? I can see you here.
Yeah, that's when I was still a teenager. I was about 19 years old. though this was 1990, just a few days before my grandmother passed away. And we brought her back to Beijing because she was very ill. She was
欧洲宫斗图鲁班修，天官赐福报进宅，又报喜来又报财。哎，金招牌，银招牌，哩哩啦啦挂起来。
back to Beijing, and a few days before she passed away, we took her to her favorite place, which is Beihai Park, and also took her here, her home. And what was slightly magical about that was that as soon as she came in here, in those days it was a nursery school, and it looked nothing like it used to look when she lived here. It was basically very dilapidated and only had one room that used to be from her when she used to live here. But as soon as she came into this place, and she was delirious already, she was gaga, she was coming in and out of consciousness. But as soon as she came in the courtyard, she said, "Oh, my mom's calling me for dinner." So she knew where she was instinctively, even without being able to really see anything, being surrounded by children from that nursery school in a completely kind of alien environment. But she knew she was home, and that she.
刘正不在你们那个群吗？
他们现在自己在这个在系统里边，那你这个是怎么切啊？明白。
哎，刘哥，啊，我们。 那个海绵信号已经切过去了。
切过去了是吧？
啊，对。
这是什么情况？
对，那我这里面去。
好，你看一下。哎，王部长，您先忙，我们这边这边做海绵直播啊。哎，刘浩进去了。李老师。
家也有了千年宝，他家也有了万年财，千年宝了万年财，大伙儿发财，我天天来。哎，新年新月新日生，红红绿绿贴满门，左边贴着摇钱树。右边贴着聚宝盆，聚宝盆上有金鸡，金鸡上有个小金人。我问金人哪里去？一到此地，大下根。
Everyone, welcome to Xinhua Live Report. I'm now in University of
有没有
Science and Technology of China in Hebei.
有了，好。那你那个小蜜蜂开着试一下。
小蜜蜂再开始试一下，小蜜蜂。
稍等一下，我们用小蜜蜂试一下啊。
用小蜜蜂。哎，利用的时候不要拔，不要插，要不然要重启。
好，重启。